is you just go. We're
It's
doing,
so cold. Nothing colder and open than that fish tank behind you, Kevin. It's just beautiful for those of you listening.
yeah,
There's some
I've been doing a little remodeling at the DYC studios here in Tampa, Florida. Mr. Peak's just down the road. I think I'm gonna for our team call tomorrow. I'm just gonna like wave in the background.
Okay, so we're excited to talk about all this fun stuff, Kevin, and thank you for having me on. But why are you in Tampa? Tell us why you're in Tampa.
My niece is getting married, and she said, I'm 43, she's 26. She goes, hey, Uncle Kevin, you got really good camera equipment. Could you like take pictures for my wedding? I mean,
You got
I
sucked
assume
in.
you're a good photographer because you've got this really expensive equipment. So I'll pay for you and your family to come down if you take all my pictures. So
That's very nice of you to do that, Uncle Kev. But just tell her how much you paid for that one big camera lens, and then see if
oh,
she'll.
well,
If she'll.
now I get to use it. So yeah. Well, okay. So this is going to be a big one. I'll do, I guess, the traditional opening. Welcome everyone to Market Proof Marketing, a very special live edition. Why is it live? Because we got important things to talk about. We got incredible guests, and our podcast producer is in Italy. So we said we're going to have to make this one live, one take, one cut, and go. But yeah, Brian and Brian, our two special guests, will do introductions on. But you know, the NAR settlement got approved by a preliminary approval by a judge. So it looks like that's where things are going. And we need to talk about what builders should be doing because I'm sure you saw, Mike, Pulte has decided that they want to know exactly how much money they're going to make from this settlement, or they might want to sue on their own. And then DR Horton came out and said, we love agents. We love brokers. No matter what happens, we're here with you. And so we got extreme ends of the spectrum from two of the biggest builders in the country. So let alone all the medium and smaller size builders who are like, I don't understand. Am I supposed to pay nothing? Am I supposed to tell them to all take a hike? Am I supposed to offer 5%? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
So we
those are
thought we'd
all
try to bring
great
some
questions, and
clarity.
this is a huge topic. And I still don't know why you invited me to be on the live podcast. What am I here for? Oh, wait, my wife is a realtor, so I'll tell you what's up in her world.
Hey,
But no,
Sean.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to go live with the Brian Boreo and Bryan Sheppard. So we'll talk about them soon. And yes, good to see all the people, which is probably different for you, Kevin, streaming in and chatting if they're here. So tell us where you're from if you're
Yeah.
joining us, because we always want to know who's tuning
Sean
in.
Carpenter, real estate professional, real estate trainer, and a resident of Tampa. Yeah, this is my dream, Mike. When I started the podcast, I was like, wouldn't it be like, because I grew up with AM radio because
Yes.
I'm older than I look. And so like a call-in show sounds like the coolest thing ever. So this is the closest thing we got to it. Hey,
Okay.
Rachel.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. So your wife's a realtor. What's your wife saying first before we
My
bring
wife's
in our
name is
first
Corey
guest?
Lyon. She is an accomplished realtor. She became a realtor because we do a lot of transactions on our own. We invest in single family real estate, and she was also looking for ways to help friends and family who wanted to navigate that real estate landscape. And she looked into something that I was kind of like pushing her towards for a while. And then she finally did it. So it was an interesting journey. All this stuff happened, and she kind of looks at me and she goes, why did I even do this? But the story I always like to tell is, my wife is a realtor now, and card carrying NAR member. And she went through that whole process. She's also a yoga instructor. And what's interesting is it took her like twice as long to become a yoga instructor. And I was than a full-fledged realtor. And I was asking her the other day, I go, what do you think is, like even in the training and licensing process and testing and everything? And she goes, it's the craziest thing in real estate. They really should be spending time teaching you how to write a contract and like go over a contract and addendum. Like that should be the test. Like I had to show people I could do yoga in front of people. And so it was just so interesting to hear her talking about that. And again, it is what it is, but she has no skin in the game. she'll tell it like it is. So yes, that's some of my experience. Plus we like bought and sold 14 homes, not including our investment properties. So we dabble.
Yeah, and we'll get into this later because we want to get to our guests. They're fantastic. Drop questions that you might have, by the way, about this whole scenario, and we'll pull them out as we go along. But I've bought homes with real estate agents. I've bought and sold homes without real estate agents, and so yeah, we're going to have lots of personal experiences and anecdotes and stories to tell along the way. And feel free to again to share yours in the chat. But first, here he is, everyone. Brian Boreo, the co-founder of 1000 Watt. He's been in real estate media, marketing, and technology since 1997. And before co-founding 1000 Watt, Brian served as the president of a small little news organization named Inman, real estate's leading trade media company, and as CEO of VREO, where he created e-signature and document management software for tablet PCs. Brian has led dozens of companies through complex brand and marketing challenges and leads the 1000 Watt team daily. And just the nicest, smartest guy in the business.
Well, thank you.
I don't know if you can be both. Are you allowed to be both?
I hope you're recording this so I can play that back for my family.
For all time, Brian. For
Yes,
all time.
please. Okay, good. Well, it's
you're
good to talk.
You're a thought leader without a doubt. I mean, the people who do billions of dollars in transactions listen to what you and your partner Mark Davidson have to say and think, and the whole team at 1000 Watt. So we know there's always multiple ways to look at everything.
Yeah.
What do you think are the positive outcomes of this settlement for the industry?
Well, I think there are a few, and there are really no unequivocally good or bad things with this whole situation, in my opinion. But I see a couple areas where things could work out ultimately in a good or good-ish way. And the first of those is that the system that has prevailed for decades now of shared compensation driven by the MLS has really made it possible for lots and lots of sub-professional, lightly skilled, shall we say, real estate professionals to operate in this business, right? Compensation was baked into the cake. You never had to really talk about it with your clients if you didn't want to. In fact, our consumer research shows that 70% of people who have bought a home in the last 3 years can't, looking back, actually tell you how their agent was paid. 70%.
Wow.
So we had this system where it was just too easy, right? And now that system is looking like it's going to be changed significantly, it's going to be a little bit harder for folks to navigate that process, particularly on the buy side. And it seems like a low bar, but it isn't. And so I'm hoping that we end up with a realtor population that is more highly skilled going forward, and that's good for everybody.
Okay, awesome. And I've heard, a lot of people have reacted to this in different ways from both sides of our industries. I say plural just because, we call them used homes, you call them existing homes, and new builds. This is going to change everything. And the Wall Street Journal and New York Times say the 6% commission is dead. Everything's about to everything as you know it is going to change forever. To really nothing's changing. So it sounds like you're falling somewhere in the middle and kind of aiming at the increase in professionalism.
Yeah.
As an upside?
As an upside, yeah. And look, the downside, I suppose, is that it's going to be really tough on folks within the used home business. There will be agents who can't clear the, unfortunately, very low bar anymore. And it's going to be tough for them to leave the business. It's going to be tough for some of the brokers that depend upon them, the MLSs that depend upon them, the realtor associations that depend upon them. So it's not going to be pretty, but I hope it gets us to a better place. And, I think there's been so much noise in the media and bold pronouncements about homes going on sale and the commission, falling dramatically. And I think we have to remind ourselves that consumers' interaction with the world of real estate is broadly episodic. Okay. We buy a house, and now over a decade later, right? Because we move less than we did even 5 years ago, right? We re-engage. And in between those milestones, we don't really think about real estate. So when we raise our hand and say, hey, it's time for me to think about real estate and transact, we're not trying to reinvent the real estate industry or change the business model. We're just trying to buy or sell a house. And we're going to go with whatever seems like the flow is at that particular time. So I think that, the extreme sort of change thesis out there that you see in the media is probably inaccurate.
Yeah, functionally, the main difference is compensation is not going to be overtly in the MLS. There's conversations about the concession field, and people will try what they'll try. We'll see how that goes. But that's a pretty concrete change. And the other one is you got to have the conversation in advance, and something needs to be signed. And that's where I think, Brian, and you're such a student of how humans behave, that I think people are underestimating. Like, I think that for the professionals, that's going to be a really small adjustment. And lots of states have already required that anyway. So we kind of know what that looks like. But to your point, for those who are kind of below where the bar should be, that low hurdle may be too enough. Just having to have that conversation at all, if you only have it twice a year or once every 2 years, is going to be really uncomfortable for people to jump.
I think it will be. And, when people poo-poo this as, well, nothing at all is going to change and it's simply a procedural shift and blah, 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 blah. I remind them to go and do a simple YouTube search. And that YouTube search should be how to fill out a residential purchase agreement, an RPA, right? And what you'll see in those results are embarrassingly remedial tutorials for real estate agents on how to fill out a residential purchase agreement. Any good listing agent that you talk to right now will tell you story after story of working with buyer agents that do not know how to properly navigate the forms and the process that already exists. Okay. And I'm sure many of your home builders listening can tell plenty of such horror stories as well, right? So if you have perhaps hundreds of thousands of realtors who cannot navigate the process as it is, and then say, okay, we're going to have to shift and it's going to become trickier and you're going to have to deal with negotiations. Yeah, I think that's going to be a hurdle that is too high.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be way tougher. It's not just the change of a form. And again, people are trying to get cute. They're saying, well, I'll just say, I won't enforce whatever we're signing, or maybe I'll have people sign a $0 or $1 agreement that will only last for 48 hours. But I think that misses the point.
It misses the point, and I've heard so much stupid stuff like that over the last month. And sadly, what it's going to do is to provoke the ire and interest of our friends who are plaintiffs' attorneys and our friends in the federal government.
Right.
So
okay. These are none of this is in our show notes, Brian, but don't you get a sense that this is kind of like, hey, we're going to cause minimal disruption here and see if you can all raise the bar yourself?
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to stop looking at what's going on.
No, I don't think they are either. And I think, unfortunately, we are going to have people who are not comfortable making the changes required and will try to play games. And I think that will come back to bite the industry yet again.
You say, Brian, yet again. So what do you mean by that? Because even before this shift, that was, it was shifted for the general population of real estate agents.
Mm-hmm.
What was it before? I mean, this existed before. It just wasn't really out there as much as it is now.
When I say that, Mike, what I really mean to communicate is that the residential resale industry has become very good at the self-own. And the battle with the Department of Justice is decades long. The Department of Justice they sued the industry and entered into a settlement about 15 years ago because the industry was systematically blocking companies with different business models from entering the business and playing in the MLS. It's just stupid stuff like that. And we've done it to ourselves repeatedly over the years. And really the fundamental problem is that all of these things stem from the fact that, as you suggested, Mike, with your yoga and real estate comparison, the bar is entirely too low. And we have people doing this really important thing that shouldn't be doing this really important thing.
Yeah.
And
Well, one thing to clarify, I just really want to clarify on that yoga stuff. I don't want this to get taken out of hand. She did it during COVID, and it was half the time it normally takes to get a yoga license. And it was still double the amount.
Yeah, no,
to go work in
practicing real estate, helping people buy and sell homes is like, there are a few things more serious and important than that, and we have not taken the profession seriously. And we made a bet and put our chips on going for large numbers, and it has come back to bite us in the butt.
Yeah. Well, listen, I love what you're saying about us too, which I think is great because this is your industry. This is who you serve. Your business depends on it. 1000 Watt only really serves the real estate space and specifically general brokerage and then the ancillary businesses that are attached to that.
No, absolutely. And so, look, I care about this business a lot. And what I want is for the best in the business to win. And I think the situation, the way it's been set up historically, actually didn't allow the best to win. And what I'm hoping, to your question, Kevin, comes out of this is that we have this system where the best can actually claim their position in the industry. Yeah. And those who can't keep up, they move on. I mean, that's kind of the silver lining to all of this.
Well, for the 100+ builders, home builders that are listening to the show today, Brian, what are some ways that you think that general real estate agents and builders could be partnering better than they have historically? And by the way, anyone else who wants to start dropping your questions, get it early because we got one more guest to go, and then it's gonna just go quick. So get your questions in early.
Yeah. Look, I think the opportunity here for the builder community is to more thoughtfully and purposefully engage the agents who are capable of playing in this new era. I think you are probably going to have less of the agents you don't want to work with, and you are going to have more of the agents that you do want to work with in terms of bringing you buyers. And I think that's an opportunity. You mentioned that the Pulte position, which honestly I don't understand, but I may in the sense that it's been tough to work with the realtor community because you never know whether the person who is bringing you that buyer is going to cause more trouble than they're worth. And I think now there's an opportunity for builders to really cultivate relationships with the pros who are able to do it.
We've talked about this on our podcast a couple weeks ago. Mike and I talked about it on our video that we do just for leadership of our builder partners. I think if there's anything that all of us are going to agree on is that it's okay to play favorites now. Like, you're not supposed to have favorite kids, but you can have favorite real estate partners, and the rules can be a little bit different depending on that relationship, and they need to be clear no matter what. I think again, that's another thing we'll probably agree on is this kind of, we're going to change it all the time based on every scenario.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like a partnership set up to me, but establish the rules, make them clear, but they don't have to be the same rules for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I'd also say, Kevin, the realtor community, I think, is more willing to give their attention and time to builders at this moment than they probably have at any point in history.
That's right.
The used home market continues to just slog along. It's tough. And, new homes now make up, 3 times the percentage of the market that they have historically. So it's a great time to go out there and forge partnerships with realtors.
Yep. I know. I've got so many more questions and thoughts that we're going to talk through, but we want to have you hop off here now, and then we'll bring on our next guest who has a very similar, but sits from a different seat with some similar viewpoints. So thanks again, Brian. We'll see you back here in just a little bit, and we'll bring on Bryan Sheppard.
Hey, there he is. Oh
Hey.
my goodness. Good friend. Why do I love Brian? Because he's close. He's
Very
the closer
close.
Brian.
Very close.
No, but I've known Bryan Sheppard forever, president and CEO of Coldwell Banker. Brian, you've been with them since 2003. He's the president and CEO. Buck stops with him. What's cool about Brian is they have 16 offices, 850 agents. They are no small brokerage office. He's been married for over 26 years, has 6 kids, Kevin. How about that, Kevin?
That's
Kevin only has
crazy.
4.
I win.
4 is no big deal. That's like a 30-minute mile run jog.
That's right.
Right.
And
6?
so he's got 6, and Brian's an electrical engineer by trade. So he goes into real estate with something a little bit more logical and analytical. And what I love about him is, he really kind of speaks the truth, and he's making some bold moves even in his own company that was happening prior to this. We don't have to talk about it here. We really want him on to talk more from the position of, okay, you manage all these wonderful 850 agents. What do you think their expectations are? And we'll get into the specific questions here in a second, but what are their expectations on working with builders? And what would you say to the home builder who may have some challenges with realtors trying to get credit when, as Brian Boreo said, they're lightly skilled or lightly involved in a transaction, versus the ones that are doing the real work? Like, they truly are the procuring cause. They really are helping the bill. So we want to talk to you from that perspective.
Sure.
Brian, we're so happy that you're joining us today.
Mike, anytime I can come on with you, it's a good day.
It's a good day to have you. All right, Kevin, what questions do you have for the one and only?
Hey, and to be clear, because I know Sean Carpenter's on this call and he's a Coldwell Banker buddy. I'm president and CEO of Coldwell Banker Select, is an affiliate in Oklahoma and Kansas.
No, we're just going to say you're president of the whole.
I met that guy last week, so
he's the president of the United States, guys. Brian,
basically, yeah. There is that election coming up. Hey,
that's right.
I'm sure I kind of want to save your feedback for what we talked about with Brian Boreo
sure.
for after, and just kind of dive right into, as someone who's leading all of these agents, one of the biggest frustrations from home builders is, and has been, hey, I've been working with this customer. We've been building their home for 5 months, and 3 weeks before closing, someone knock on the door and said, hey, I would like 3%, please, for all that I've done. And the builder says, I'm sorry, who are you? And sometimes even the customer is like,
I guess they listed my house.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they came from either, but they're free representation for me. So I'd like to include them in the deal. So as someone leading a team, what do you feel like is the minimum requirement that if a builder were to call you and say, hey, Brian, we're not sure what to do here. This is an uncomfortable scenario for everyone, but we can't really tell how this agent's been involved. Is there kind of a standard process that you would expect to see, or a paper trail?
It's a great question. I think there's a couple of answers. There's a post July, and then there's a post July, right? When the new rules are going to go into effect and whatnot. Historically, if that property is in MLS and a builder's had that in MLS, then they're going to be obligated to that, assuming that there was procuring cause from that standpoint. I think that's where it gets into, what's the
We're going to
deal?
come back to procuring cause without a doubt when we get all 4 of us back on here, because that's the big point.
I think moving forward, if a builder were to call me, first thing I'm going to call my agent and say, did you have a buyer broker agreement signed with that buyer? If the answer is yes, then, and the builder is not, wasn't negotiated in the contract where the builder would compensate the agent, then that buyer's going to be on the hook for that. I mean, that's the purpose of having that agreement and putting the obligation in the right spot, right? I think my second question would be, what did the agent do to cause that buyer to buy that home? Were they the ones that, hey, I do a lot of work in new construction. I've done business with these 3 or 4 builders. I'm going to highly recommend, if you're looking at new construction, that you go out and you take a look at these builders and let me set that up for you. So I'm going to call my builder, reps and say, hey, I'm sending out, Mary Smith to you. She may come out this weekend, or set an appointment. I'm planning on being with her. To me, that's I'm truly engaged with my buyer, and I'm the one who's causing the buyer to show up. Or is it a buyer that got free on a weekend and went out and drove through a neighborhood and saw these homes and went into a model home and really liked what they saw and met with a rep and got under contract, and here we are, even 2 weeks after that, and oh, but wait, I've got an agent. That's a tougher conversation.
Yeah.
That's just a tough conversation.
I think that's fair. I mean, the whole part around discovery and procuring cause is tricky, but I do think, at least one of the things that I heard you kind of speaking towards is that there is a possibility of different amounts of value that the agent is bringing to the home building organization. And maybe that's something that can and should be considered. I had someone ask me, Brian, from the general real estate side recently, that said, what do salespeople get paid who sit in the model? Because it seems like everyone's complaining about what a buyer's agent makes, but what are they doing? They're just sitting in there writing some paperwork. And
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I mean, you got a good point. They've got pocket listings, all the home sites in that community, only they can sell them.
Right.
They have a model home that's been built for them. There's hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in advertising being done every year to drive traffic to their door. But Mike, most salespeople from our experience are making somewhere between 0.5 and 1.5. Like those are the extreme ranges of a transaction. And I think that kind of surprised them as like, oh, okay. So especially in a new build where it's that customer is going to be interacting with the new home salesperson for a year. I think that was a surprising insight on their end of like, oh, okay. And so if you look at kind of that range, and then from the builder's perspective, you say, okay, procuring cause, I'll give you extra for that. No doubt about it. The trick is that's a lot of agents aren't very forthcoming. And so they're kind of like trying to keep their client back. And in the meantime, they're also reaching out online because they have a question and they want to know more at 9 o'clock at night and they don't want to interrupt their agent. And then they're in the builder's CRM. And then I do think there's something about different amounts of value there that is worth talking about based upon procuring cause or not procuring cause, and inventory versus new build that the builder should be thinking about.
Sure. And I think, and that goes to the level of skill and expertise and knowledge of the agent for sure.
Yeah. Now you mentioned post-July. So what are you talking about with the agents in your office about what a post-July world looks like?
So it's interesting. So I've seen online, there's so much going on social media, online. I think people have pretty much in the industry lost their minds regarding this. And
that's a professional term.
In our company, we've been talking to our agents for the last, it's been 2.5 years about this. I remember standing up in front of our agents in October of last year and telling them, hey guys, in very short order, you're going to see the commission go away in the MLS. And so my agents, it wasn't a surprise to them, these things in the buyer broker agreement. We started in our state, a buyer broker agreement's not required, but we made it required as of January 1st. So some of this shouldn't be a big shock or surprise to my agents, but to the industry, it really is. I think it boils down to, here's my message. The settlement created really two simple changes, I should say. One is requires a buyer broker agreement to be signed. The second is it eliminates the commission from the MLS. Everybody wants to, pontificate over what does that mean? What are the solutions going to be? But I think what people are missing right now is we don't even know the problems that those simple changes have created. So in our company, we're going through an exercise, and it's not something you can do in a couple of days, but it's something that, we're actually taking the month of April and we're surveying our agents, and we're gathering data. We're getting information on what are the problems that those two simple changes has created for us. And then in May, we're going to come up with solutions to address all the problems. And then in June, we're going to train our agents. We're going to train like crazy. So that's kind of the process and what we're talking about.
This we didn't put this in the questions, but I'm going to throw it out to you because I know you can answer it on the fly.
Sure.
If not, we'll just hit eject and you'll be gone from the podcast. I'm just kidding. So this is what Kevin and I are telling, or here's a suggestion that we're making for builder partners to think about in the future. Number one, we're going to continue to partner with the best realtors out there.
For sure.
That's never going to change. We want their business. We want their buyers. Sure. We want it all. Right. We will gladly compensate those realtors as long as they can show us that they're doing the Lord's work. Like you're saying, Brian, like they're doing the basic stuff. Right. Now, all that being said, builders are already offering concessions. They'll probably look at those types of concessions and give the opportunity for the buyers and the realtors to determine how that's taken care of. Sure. And that's all going to happen. What probably we'll look at changing is potentially, it may not be a full 3% all the time, number one. And number two, the second thing is that's going to be determined, like you said, how this whole process happened, where the realtor got involved. Yeah. And that's going to go right back to the realtor and the buyer themselves. And we are going to differentiate most likely between those who are what we would call high-performing realtors, or realtors that are doing this as their actual job, if it's going to get into those sticky situations like you're talking about.
Sure.
To those who maybe sell a home once a year or sell a new construction once every 7 years. What are your thoughts on playing favorites, like Kevin was saying at the beginning, as a CEO of a large brokerage of 850 agents, where you may have to be hearing about that from some of your realtors?
Yeah. So let me kind of put it to you this way. So I did a little statistical research, right? In our in our Tulsa area, homes that were in the MLS that closed in 2023 that were labeled as new construction or to be built or whatnot.
Okay.
My agent sold. We were the number one company that sold new construction. Mike, that may surprise you. When you think of.
Way to go. Can we get this guy like a mug or a hat?
I
or
want a hat.
something?
I want a hat. Yeah. So we had 100. We sold 110 new construction homes. 84 unique agents sold those 110 homes.
Wow.
And we only had, I think the number was 12 agents that sold multiple new construction homes.
That's
right? So that goes to back to what you said, Mike, is you've got those people that are higher performers, those people that new construction is on their radar and they're promoters, they're believers in the new construction product. I think that builders need to know who those people are, and they need to reach out to those people. If there's any builders in the Tulsa area that are on this call, reach out to me. I'll let you know who those people are and put you in touch with them. Right. I think it's an opportunity for builders to have certify agents, have a certification process where you bring the realtors to you, builders, and you spend a half a day or a day and go through your product with them. Let these high performing realtors know, teach them about your product. What's your competitive advantage? Why are you different than the 50 other builders in town? And kind of give them a certification stamp. And so when they do bring a buyer, that buyer is going to be a little more educated on your product than just an agent that is driving around with them and they say, hey, there's that neighborhood, let's stop in. I think that's, that'll definitely drive business. And I think that honestly, I think, Mike, you can compensate different regarding what agents, if they do multiple deals, if they promote your product. Of course, look, if I'm a builder, I'm going to say, look, you bring a buyer. I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am. You may get this amount, but if you're a repeat agent for me and and I know you're promoting my products and you're certified, that's probably worth more to a builder.
Okay. So a couple things you said. And first of all, I love how Kevin just slid on West Coast Brian without telling him.
We just got to get into this discussion that I've been very polite and impatient, but I just want to
he could have been eating his lunch. We don't know what he could have been. So you said two things. Well, a couple of things that were very interesting. First of all, thank you for the stats. The largest in Oklahoma, only 1.5%. Is that, am I doing that right? 12 out of your 850 agents, basically sub 1%
in the Tulsa area. So 12 out of, let's say 600.
12 out of 600. So maybe we get to 2% have sold more than one new home.
Correct.
Again,
that was labeled. I should say that was labeled in the MLS, but yeah.
That's just an interesting stat because it just shows the frequency is so low, the exposure is so low, and so certification is necessary. I think it's fine to come from a builder. I think it's better to come from your local HBA.
Yeah, that's if there's a rallying cry for NAHB or local HBAs to take on kind of leading the charge on additional new construction training. I know Kimberly Mackey does a great job here in Florida with a lot of builders and trains people on that as well. But I brought all four of us back on because I do think in terms of there'll be some builders who will say, this is our standard program of how we compensate buyers agents. And I think they are going to have two tiers. It's going to be those who we believe or reason to believe would be a procuring cause. And what I think that just boils down to, Brian Boreo in particular, is teams and agent pools that are advertising heavily in a market. Because if your procuring cause is that you coach someone's soccer team and you're doing, one transaction every 2 years,
right?
That's where the builder is saying, that doesn't feel the same to me as someone who I see their name, I see them promoting themselves as a professional who knows this area and would be likely to be someone who meets a customer who's looking for a home early in the process and then guides them back to a builder as a potential option. Mm-hmm. Or just to Bryan Sheppard's point, those who do the most transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem fair to you?
They do. And Bryan Sheppard, I love your idea of, a builder certification program. I mean, Realtors love certifications.
They have to have.
I want as many letters behind my name as I can. Right?
Exactly. Right. So who doesn't love a good certification? And I think that's a great idea. And what you're doing there is you're surfacing the people who are interested and capable and willing to make a commitment to the process. I see Sean Carpenter's comment here, right? Mm-hmm. A new build homes is truly a niche, just like seniors and relocation for some agents. That's what I don't understand. So, I mean, of course, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's very few new homes here. In other markets, new homes are all over the place. What we know is that they make up 30% of home sales right now. Why? How is that a niche? If I'm a real estate professional, I'm serious. Why would I not be out there cultivating relationships with builders and vice versa in a really serious, thoughtful, studied way? I mean, it's not a niche, but yet we on the used home realtor side of the business have always treated it as a niche, which doesn't. Yeah. It's like kind of a new world here, and I think there's going to be opportunity for both builders and for realtors to take advantage of that.
Well, that's where I don't know what other word to use, but skepticism, I think, comes from the home building community. One of the only reasons you wouldn't bring your customers to new construction sooner is because you're getting paid potentially later when the home closes. And so it's not as quick of a turn. And that, again, just doesn't process as being the best fiduciary interest for your customer. But yeah, it's not just a third of the homes on the market. It's a third of the homes on the market where probably 80% or more are offering below market interest rates and concessions. And that's where I think, again, I don't want to get too tactical. So, and I'm prone to do that. Michael, stop me. But I think some builders will say, this is our standard program and we have 2 tiers. And if you want to get in that higher tier, go through our certification program. Then you can join that tier, or maybe hit a middle tier that still pays you another 0.5% or 0.25% more than kind of tier 1. Then there's going to be other builders who they just say, hey, we're willing to give 5% in total concessions, and it's up to you, buyer. Do you want the more? Now, they don't have to do that. Fannie just got the letter that came out that said, hey, buyer's agent commissions, as long as they've been customary amounts as what has been, it's not going to count towards those concession limits.
Yeah.
But I think there will be builders who will basically say, I'm willing to give 5%. And if you want X% to go to your buyer's agent instead of getting you the countertop you want, and I think that I've talked to builders who are having those conversations internally about a way to handle it, saying, buyer, you need to make a decision as to how much this representation is worth to you. And I'm curious what you two think.
But before they get into that, I want to just say something. In most of the scenarios, let's just not dance around this, because this is reality. In most scenarios where a realtor is helping that buyer out, they are helping them because they sold their home, right? Even on the used side, but specifically on new, their home is for sale and they're out looking at new without the realtor a lot of the times. And then they come back around. So that's just how it happens. Customers are finding it themselves because they have access to it. Now, it doesn't mean they're going through the transaction process themselves. So the process is a little bit more streamlined with builders, because our whole thing is we go direct to consumer.
Yeah.
So before you answer that, to just keep that in mind on what's really happening out there.
Yeah.
And then go back to,
and also, not to distract you both, but Brian, you have this amazing stat about we talked about the stat about, real estate agents have higher trust than home builders do. Home builders are trusted less than politicians and so many others. And you had really good insight in a conversation we had maybe a month or 2 ago now, Brian, of Boreo, of saying, well, of course they trust these people more. They know them.
Yeah. I think that the stat that I gave you was we did about 6-8 weeks ago, we did a study of American adults, 1,000 people across the United States who had nothing to do with the real estate or new home business. And we asked them how many real estate agents they knew. And on average, an American adult knows 6.8 realtors personally, right? This is not Facebook friends. These are people you know from school, kids, church, neighbors. Okay. Now it gets even crazier. 70% of home buying units are couples. Okay. So 70% of home buying units know almost 14 realtors. They can field a football team of their personal realtor friends, right? So when you think about the sentiment towards realtors, sure, there's this generalized notion out there that we don't have a lot of respect for realtors in the consumer mind, but these are friends, family, neighbors, and we do business with them. And 9 out of 10 times at the end of the transaction, we feel good about it and them. So it's this wonky, totally unique personal web of connections that kind of puts this industry together. And that doesn't happen on the new home side, which is why I think you have sentiment lower for builders than for realtors, even though sometimes we think it would be the opposite.
Yeah, you're buying from Pulte, you're not buying from Susan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and in any scenario, the realtor's not asking you for 6 figures plus of your money. So that the amount of trust that the customer is going to wish they had when you're paying $1 million at closing versus the percentage that's going over here for this service. So that's where I'm not trying to set the market. I don't want to get called in by a grand jury or anything, but I think, to me, it seems reasonable that if builders are essentially not procuring cause is important and should be an item on the list, but outsourcing trust to someone they trust more seems to me to be worth about 1%. And so that's also just kind of interesting of like, if
Wow,
your brand
you put
was
a number
better,
to it. Wow.
I was about to say, Brian, I was like, okay, let's just.
yeah, I just think if your brand was better, if your reputation was better, if your service and warranty experience was better, then you wouldn't have to pay that 1%. But if you lack it and you need to have these people that consumers trust more than you, it seems, I don't know that it's 1%. It's something that's significant in total dollars, not necessarily in percentages. But I think that plus procuring cause plus other reduction of friction for the consumer and the builder is kind of where it's never going to be completely logical. I know that.
I
But I
wonder,
feel like the trust
let me
part's
ask
never
you,
talked
let me
about.
ask you a question about that, Kevin. So look, I don't know the home builder economics on this, right? But it's all about customer acquisition costs. So you go direct to consumer. I don't know what you do. You pay salespeople to sit in the model. You do out of home. You do
All in, Brian, it's about 5 to 7% of the sales price. All
Mhm.
sales and marketing expenses combined. Marketing, advertising by itself around 1% for the sake of
Okay,
today's
okay,
conversation.
got it. So, yeah, you know these numbers. Yeah. So if you work with a quality realtor who's going to serve you up a qualified buyer on a silver platter, why is that only worth 1%? I guess that would be my counter to that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that's where it ends. I'm saying that's kind of like
Minimum
the
bar.
Yeah.
minimum. I don't even know this person. I don't
Right.
think they're procuring cause. Okay, but do they trust them and they're the
Right.
ones saying they should buy the
Yeah.
house from you? I
Right.
think that's kind of the minimum. I'm not, yeah, sorry for clarification, everyone, before I get hate mail and worse. I'm not saying that's it. I'm just saying, even
Yeah.
in that case, I think that's where some division presidents are like, just pay them. Just say, at least we're going to give you 1%, even if you came in. Anyway, I don't, yeah.
Yeah.
Guys,
So
listen, 1% of $500,000 is still $5K to drop your kids
Yeah.
off at the builder.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to just interject here is you have to remember though, when a buyer is, post July, right? When a buyer is working with an agent, they're going to have a buyer broker agreement that's signed, committing that buyer to a certain dollar figure percent. And I mean, so the value that the buyer is determining ahead of time that realtor is going to provide them is done, supposedly is going to be done prior to that buyer walking into a new construction home. And so I mean, builders need to understand, yeah, I'm going to offer 1% or 2% or whatever it is, right? There may be some obligation on top of that buyer is going to have to come to the table with.
So question for you, Brian, we totally understand that. And obviously that's going to be the weirdness afterward.
It's just different.
It's just different. So what happens though, when there's a builder out there and goes, listen, I got an idea. We're going to pay realtors 4%, 5%. We're going to go crazy.
Yeah.
Well, they're doing that now.
So what
in
happens
San Antonio?
July? You and I were talking about this. What happens post July when there's agreement signed and it's only for 3%?
Yeah, that shifts the awkwardness from the builder. It shifts the awkwardness to the buyer's agent and with the buyer. Hey, I need to amend this agreement so I can get more. Right?
So I can get an extra 10 grand.
That's awkward. That's awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to, there's two sides of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
for sure.
We try and attract it. And listen, the other part too is just understanding the economics of home building. 3%, 2%, 1%. We're talking about not a whole lot of money. From a profit margin perspective, that can be 10, 15% of a builder's profit margin going right out the door. And so that's why there is always concern. Yeah. The other reason someone asked, like, why would people be afraid to bring, why are realtors like kind of sometimes nervous or about the builders? Because some builders, even though they've worked their butts off to get this deal into them, tell them to take a hike. And so they've been burned in the past. Sure. And especially with the hot market that we came off, there's some builders that have said, yeah, we don't need you. We're fine. And so there is some of that stuff, but it all goes back to
that's remembered in the realtor community.
Yeah. They keep receipts. Listen, I know.
Well, okay. But this is where the definition of the realtor community, it sounds like most of us are in agreement, is going to change. And that's where, the analogy I was using is if we're playing favorites, so to speak, and we're saying, hey, if you do repeat business or you're in this top tier we'll pay you 2.5, 2.25, whatever it is. As long as all of the popular kids in school are being treated well and communicated clearly and everything's understood, I think that's where the community at large is, again, the person who does one transaction every 2 years who really got their feelings hurt. I think we need the professionalism of the rest of the agents to say, no, that makes sense. Like you got 1.25 this time, and then if you do it again, they're going to pay you. But they already pay me what I mean. I just think if you do this right, you'll have friends in the community that are gonna stick up for you.
So I think it's an opportunity for builders to really promote their product, their, for lack of a better word, their love for realtors, their desire for realtors to be a part of the realtors that deserve it and earn it, to be a part of the transaction so that they can drive more business to them, as opposed to just that, hey, I've got, 50 billboards throughout the city and that's how I'm going to drive people. I think it's important that builders reach out to not only those agents, go through their database, see who over the last 3 years have sold multiple of their homes, and bring them in, show them some love, tell them, hey, I know you may be fearful, you may be scared, you may be excited about what's going to happen post July, but we're here to take care of you because you're taking care of us by bringing us business, and we want to promote that. We want to help make it easier for you to do that.
Again, I think to tie this in a bow, although I love leaving cliffhangers and loose ends at the end of a show and make sure everyone tunes in for the next episode. I think Tyson is talking about, hey, tiers will be difficult with buyer brokers agreements and RESPA. I don't think so, and here's why. And I don't think anyone is going to be suing a customer for, again, none of the professionals. If I'm only selling one home every 4 years, I keep extending it because, again, we know the stats are these people are not a small number of the current agent pool. If they might sue, but the professional is not going to sue someone over $2,000 difference between what the builder is paying and what the agreement says. I don't think the reputation and the overall experience for their local community is going to be worth that if they're doing lots of transactions a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Question. Cause this is why Kevin brings me on. Cause I'll bring the spice level, and turn it up a notch. I think we
got 10 more minutes max, and we're shutting her down.
This will only go 14. Here, I think a lot of this is driven the discomfort, uncomfortableness, whatever the word is. The discomfort is driven by some people who are clinging, grasping, white knuckling onto their one transaction a year. So, I'm going to refer to something that Rob Hahn wrote about, and something that's been around since, 20, whatever it was, 15 or 14. When they hired Steven Swinopel to go and do a report, and A1 on this report, the danger report, was what is it that could disrupt our industry? And his thing was masses of marginal agents that will destroy a reputation. The real estate industry is saddled with a large number of part-time, untrained, unethical, and incompetent agents. These are not my words. These are from the report. And that is what's pushing so much of this. Like, but what about everything that's happening? So how do you feel about just that idea of, we have however many, 1.52 million agents, whatever that number is, how many of them do you think are going to make it through this next little dust up or should be in the business?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the spice. Second of all, I agree with Rob's observation. This is the foundational problem with the real estate industry. We have still, right now, over 1.5 million realtors in the United States of America. We could probably lose 1 million of them and be okay and better for it. But the devil's bargain that the industry made decades and decades ago was that more is better. And that bet is being called right now. And that's the problem of problems in the real estate business. And we all say how scandalous it is that we have hundreds of thousands of lightly skilled, untrained, semi-competent agents doing this really important thing in the world, but nobody has ever done anything about it, up to and including the most responsible party, the National Association of Realtors. So we could have taken care of this ourselves. This is why I call it the greatest self-own in the history of American business. So we had the chance to do it, and now plaintiffs' attorneys that we don't like, regulators that we don't like, media that we love to complain about are making it happen for us when we could have done it ourselves.
Dang. Kevin, did you just highlight Brian?
I just found a new tool. Yeah.
I needed to level up the spice even higher than where Mike brought it.
Well, and again, in the wrap of all this, everyone wants to pay the professional agents. Again, I think trust, procuring cause, reducing friction. I mean, again, builders are currently offering in many parts of the country 4 and 5% because they think procuring cause alone must be worth 3. Right. And if I'm doing kind of that reverse math,
Sheppard, so, as the CEO of a very well-known brokerage,
the number one new construction
in Tulsa, that's for sure. Sales company.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
how do you respond to what Brian said?
I agree 100%. I think that, NAR put out a stat that 49% of the realtors in 2023 sold 1 or 0 transactions in 2023, and that's just dismal. I think that it is difficult for me to have somebody representing my company that is going to be talking to a buyer to rep a buyer or talking to a seller to list a property where it's going to be the largest dollar figure transaction they're going to do in their life at that moment. It's going to be probably the most complex, and you're talking about a home, so it's going to be obviously very emotional, and it's just not right or fair or whatever you want to call it for somebody to rep a buyer or seller when real estate's their side hustle. It just doesn't work. And I mean, we've taken action, look, historically speaking, guilty, right? Have we hired people that are part-time agents? Yeah, in our company we have. We are going through a culling process in our company, and we want to make sure that we are bringing to the table, bringing to the public, high quality, high trained agents that are absolutely going to crush it for them. New construction builders, the same, right? We want to have high quality people that are repping. I mean, we, as big as we are, I think we do a really good job of training our agents and setting them up for success. I mean, and you can see that, and we kind of judge that by how few lawsuits we get in over the course of a year. So,
yeah, I like this idea from Barrett of like a Bonvoy program, because one of the challenges, Sheppard, is the 12 agents you said did repeat business. I'm guessing most of those 12 were not with the same builder. They were just new construction, but could have been for different builders.
Yeah, it was well, yeah, I can go back into the details or to the facts, but you are correct. Multiple builders across that spectrum.
So that would be really helpful for the industry and individual markets to know who's doing new construction.
Yeah,
broadly.
those agents are obviously proponents of new construction, and so builders should want to know who those agents are, so they can communicate either through myself or to the agent directly to say, hey, let's meet with them. Let's get them to know my product. So the next time they recommend that to a client, I'm at least one of the ones that they recommend.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be more. Like I loved your example, Sheppard, of we're going to think about it. We're going to put some things in place. We're going to go out in June and see how it goes, so that by July, everything's tight and buttoned up.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the technicality and the different actions that everyone's going to take, it's going to be interesting to watch for the next couple of months how that changes. When it comes to messaging and branding, though, Mr. Boreo has a very special event where he will have the one and only Mike Lyon as a
Yes.
guest presenter. So
And
we
we'll
want to
be
give you a quick
attending.
second to talk a little bit about what you're doing, Brian.
Yeah, sure, Kevin. So yeah, Mike's going to join us, and we're going to, I think, have an extension of this discussion. I mean, I think my takeaway from all of this is, wow, what a unique opportunity to reset the builder-realtor relationship. And so Mike's going to join us to talk a little bit about that, and I look forward to it. But we're going to talk about all of this weirdness that is circulating in the real estate world at our event, the 25th and 27th of June in Dallas. And we're going to approach it all.
We love Gillies.
At
Those of
Gillies,
you who were at the summit last year, you know well.
Totally.
Great venue.
So yeah, it's going to be a good show. We're going to attack all of this really practically.
All right. Well, thanks again to all of you who joined us on the live program today. There are some good questions asked that there's no way in heck we were going to make up an answer for, but we'll dig into them.
Oh, I'd do it. I'd play a lawyer. I'd play a lawyer on a live stream. Why not?
Thanks again to Brian Boreo and Bryan Sheppard for joining us. Check out their links in the bio if you're listening to the podcast recording or watching the recording on YouTube later. Signing off for episode, we don't know. We've been doing this for, I think, 5 years now. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.